The post-war years, the early post-war years, the end of the 40s and the early 1950s were very, very positive, groundbreaking years for Madame Alexander as she continued to constantly introduce new product lines and trying different formulas, sometimes in the use of the wig, such as the beautiful wig we have on the lovely Princess Margaret Rose here, which is still the classic mohair that was used in earlier years. And look at that extraordinary color of that hair with those fastened in original flowers cascading down the side of her hair and repeated in the floral bouquet that she is holding and a little cluster of flowers at her waist. Different tags were introduced by Madame Alexander at this time, and it helps collectors identify their dolls. The cloverleaf example from the late 40s, early 50s is very, very important, and some of them actually have the name of the doll on it, such as this one, which says Margaret Rose, and others just simply have her name. Again, she continued her pattern or her style of putting like a shadow print fabric underneath the sheer upper gown. So here we have this beautiful taffeta coral underskirt under the sheer blue, and it gives us this wonderful, wonderful shadow effect. And a lot of times when people are looking at a doll like that, they don't really realize how many of these little details went into the perfection of the dolls. I'm hoping at some point we can do a catalog where we're showing all of the underwear and the shoes that appeared on the dolls, because once again, her costuming, her seamstress work on the dolls, not hers, but her people who did the work. She designed them and improved them, and then other people were actually doing the stitching in her studios in New York. She followed every step of the way. She was on top of everything, and she wanted every detail to be important. So even the underwear is just absolutely exquisitely done. We have another lovely example over here. Very, very beautiful girl. And different faces start to appear, as you can see now. Margaret Rose has what is known as the Margaret face. And then we have this pert little face that is known as the Maggie face. And that is another example of a beautiful doll from this time period. And I'm going to show you her hat box, because attached to the hat box is what I talked to you about in the first group, the fashion medallion. In this case, was actually in a brass material, not just the paper material. So a doll from the 1951 period, 51, when she was winning, she won her fashion medallion award. This is a really interesting doll. This was a woman who finally in New York, started elsewhere, but finally in New York, did a series of radio children's programs at the time called The Story Princess. And Madame Alexander issued her doll called The Story Princess. Later on, she also did a doll of Sherry Lewis. And Madame ran in those kind of circles in New York, in society circles. She knew people people in the fashion world. And this was really important with her to try to continue promoting the people who were doing work with children, storybook work with children. This particular version of the Story Princess was an exclusive model made for a particular store. Let me show you. It was for ZCMI's Story Princess doll. This was a special little booklet that they had made for it. This was a store in Salt Lake City, and they commissioned a number of these dolls, and they sold out overnight. Here's a photograph of the real Story Princess. So you can see that her dress was made to emulate, the doll's dress was made to emulate the real Story Princess. Making store exclusives was a major project for Madame throughout the years. She loved to do that. Something I thought of last night that I'd never really paid attention to before, but her market for dolls, and somebody's going to correct me about this as sure as anything, but in all of my thinking, her market for dolls was America. And unlike, for example, Émile Jumeau, who was the premier control of the market in France in the end of the 1800s, his market was all over the world. Madame seemed to center her marketing almost exclusively on American market, catering to upper scale department stores or upper scale toy stores, and doesn't seem to have reached into the international market much at all. If I'm wrong, I'd love to be corrected. Well, gently, please. Okay, now we're going to show you in the front a series of dolls that are known as the Godey dolls, and they're costumes that are wearing fashions from the Godey period, the 1860 period, the gentlemen in particular. Now look at their hair again. Every one of these has different hair. They're absolutely wonderful. He has a very classic, what are known as mutton chops, with the little curls formed at the side of his head, and then the sideburns that are also curled coming down. I'm going to tip him forward so you can see how the wig is actually sewn at the top, the center seam. These were expensive wigs. She did not shirk at anything. There's a wonderful story that will be appearing in Doll News of UFDC shortly, telling about her creation of the set of coronation dolls she made for the Abraham and Strauss store in New York in 1953. And in there, it's really, I found it quite interesting because her husband kept coming in, who kind of ran the business part of the company by that point. And he kept coming and saying, you can't spend all this money, you can't buy all of these expensive things. And she just sort of looked at him and said, okay, and went on her way and did her thing and bought the expensive products and the expensive materials and made everything so very fine. And that is the great legacy she's left of us. Here is the bride. And again, let me turn her so you're able to see the back of her hair.
Then her cap and veil are
the way the
designed to
curls are
accommodate the
arranged,
curls at the top
and
of the head. So
then
there's like an
her
opening
cap
there.
and veil
So the cap
are designed
veil
to accommodate
fits
the
right
curls
over
at the top of the
door.
head. So there's like
Very,
an
very
opening there.
beautiful,
So
finest
the
fabrics
cap
again
veil
whatsoever.
fits right over the
She's my
coiffure.
favorite.
Very, very beautiful, finest fabrics again whatsoever. She's my favorite. I love her. I love the lavender color. I love everything about it. And the little violets are repeated in her hair, around her waist, and the little bouquet that she's holding. Very extraordinary. And again, let me turn her around. You can see her all the way around. Very, very beautiful. She's holding that clover leaf tag, by the way, that I talked to you about. And then we have two other examples. The lady in gold is considered to be the rarest of them. She very, very seldom ever shows up. She has her original tag in the back that reads simply Godey Lady, Madame Alexander, and wearing a very stylized dress of the period. And look at her hair. Every one of these has a different color hair. She's almost like a silver brown. Beautifully designed. Lovely little necklace that she's wearing. The sleeves with the Sue sleeves coming out, and once again, her little clover leaf tag. Very beautiful doll. And then one further example. And she also has her original tag, which says Godey Lady. So these were all from this particular series. These came out in 1951 also, so that was a big year for Madame. Same year as the portrait dolls. This wonderful series of the Godey dolls. Now, fashions of the century. Look over here. I'm going to move a few of these so you can probably see them a little better. They can cluster and have a party. Okay. Fashions of the century, these two very, very beautiful dolls. And when I brought this up, the Mr. Video Man, I'm going to call him, looked at this doll and he said, oh, that's Leia, that's Princess Leia. And I looked at it and I said, yes, it is. So I guess I'm back more living in 1950s than in current culture, but it does, doesn't it? It's extraordinary. And I want you to see how beautiful this hair is. Look at the side curls formed at the side. Then we're bringing it around. And the curls at the back. Let me move from velvet ribbon to where it should be. Very, very beautifully done. And then the side curls continuing on the other side. And in the front, not just pull back sharply, but this soft little wave in the front. Very, very beautiful. She has a characteristic glove that Madame used quite often, which was the fingerless glove. So it would pull up the arms. It would kind of finish look to the costume, but their fingers would still be exposed and catch on with the thumb. Clover leaf, little clover leaf tag, and then her wonderful satin gown and her matching taffeta underslip and her stockings and her coral satin shoes. Everything about them is just beautiful. And then her sister down here, again, very, very beautiful, wearing the blue gown. And look at this feather fan. Almost impossible. These dolls are so rare to begin with, but you never find them with all of the accessories, including that gorgeous flowered fan. Very, very wonderful. And again, look at her hair. Look at how it's coil wrapped. It's not the same as I'll call her Princess Leia, just for fun. It's a different arrangement. Basically the same, but variations. So people were hand working these. And see, she has, if you will know, a coronet of braids across the crown and forehead bangs. Very, very beautiful doll. So here we have this wonderful arrangement of dolls that are from the 1948 to 1951 period. Superb work being done by Madame. Just jumping into the foreground at that point. She'd earned her kudos. She had worked so hard in learning her métier, and learning different materials, and learning how to find good fabrics and how to use them, how to train her people. And when that war ended, she went full blast ahead and brought out these extraordinary dolls. And that's the time period that her reputation was made. Stores clamored for her product. I can remember when I first started working with dolls, this was in the late 70s, and people would tell me about, even at that time, they would go to department stores when they heard a new shipment of Alexander dolls were coming in. And there would be fights in the department stores because everybody wanted them. They would be bought up as soon as they walked in the door.
She built this reputation.
That's because she built this reputation based on these extraordinary dolls from the early post-war periods. And I'm going to show you a few more. We've graced the cover of our catalog of part 2 of the Rodney Waller collection with a wonderful example of the Lucy Bride. And it is an example. I keep harping on the wonderful fabrics and the attention to detail and coiffure and costuming and stitchery and accessories on these dolls. And the Lucy Bride may be the finest example of that. She is this wonderful multi-layered gown. Look at how we have the lace. And then we have the taffeta undercoat. And then we have the pleated tulle under that. You know how hard that was to pleat that tulle? Try doing it sometime. But guess what? There's a second layer of pleated tulle. And then there is another layer of not pleated tulle. And then there is a taffeta slip under that. It's extraordinary, the work that went into this. But look at that wonderful face, a gorgeous face. Special painting on the Lucy Bride. And her veil and her cap with the lilies of the valley cascading down each side of her face. This is truly a work of art. And to find it and have it preserved in this condition is truly extraordinary. She deserved to truly be the cover doll. Now, Madame each year would introduce different kind of concepts as her first page in her catalog. And in one year she did the Me and My Shadow series. And this was a good way. She could capitalize on a costume that had been designed, and then she could have it appear on dolls of different sizes. And here I'm showing you 2 different examples, each of which has the larger doll and the little mini friend that went along with it. There were always slight variations in the costume, but no one could ever look at them and not say, oh, that's the little shadow doll. This is a very, very beautiful example of what is called Mary Louise in her catalog. This little Wendykins has a little flip red hair, wonderful cap, and her older sister, her mama, we don't know, but the bigger doll has such extraordinary details as, I really want you to see how the hair was designed with these little side braids, and then the cap would curl around it, and it was such an intricate work. I mean, this was such hand workmanship that was being done. People who say that I don't collect Alexanders, they're not antique, no, look at them as works of art from this early 1950s period. These are an extraordinary part of our history. Fashion, American fashion was coming into its own at that time, American fashion for real people, and dolls in high fashion costumes made by Madame Alexander in that same New York market were also coming into their own. Look at even little details like the hand-painted gloves that she has that go along with this wonderful costume from the Me and My Shadow series. Another example on this side is the beautiful Victoria with the wonderful Maggie face. Now I'm going to show you her little shadow friend, first of all. It's the little Alexanderkins 8-inch doll. And those of you who collect all bisque miniature dolls, I say take a shelf on your cabinet and start putting in some of these 8-inch Madame Alexander dolls because they deserve their place in your cabinet of little ones as well. This is an extraordinary example. One of the things people look for in these dolls are beautiful rosy cheeks, which this doll has well. That wonderful little cap. I'll put her down and I'll turn around her and show you the top of the cap of her taller friend. Look at that. Look at the workmanship in that cap. And the curls arranged beautifully in the back, never altered, never combed. Absolutely wonderful. A little wonderful detailed bustle. And then bringing it around again, you can see her rhinestone earrings. I'll hold her head this way now this time so you can see the top of the cap. Okay. So these series that she introduced each year were a way of, you know, what's new with Madame this year? Oh, this year it was me and my shadow, and then everyone would want to have the bigger doll and the little shadow. What had remained popular with Madame from her first earliest dolls, starting with the cloth dolls through the compositions and into the hard plastic in various sizes, different costumes, her beloved Little Women series from her favorite childhood book of the four sisters and Marmee in the 1860s, in the Civil War period. And again, in the early 1950s, she produced this wonderful set. Now, I'm going to try to pull these other dolls back because I want to show you something that you can note when you see them all lined up and you really think about it, which you probably haven't, but I'm going to force you to it. Every one of these 5 dolls, same face. Well, no, let me see. No, she has the Maggie face. She has the Margaret face. So they would have one of the 2 faces, but every single one has a different hairstyle, different color and different style. And look at it from the front, and I'm going to turn it around and you watch. Look at the hairstyle from the back. Stand up here. Every one of these is perfectly preserved. Here's Mommy. She has the very, very demure black snood. And there we go. And then we turn this one around. Here's Joe. Joe was always my favorite because I had 3 sisters, and I was the second, and Joe was the second. And so I was a fan of Joe. And then we have the beautiful, very, very beautiful, and little girl with the ringlet curls. And this is Amy. So look at those hairstyles. Totally different on all of the dolls. And if you saw the top of them, one would have a coronet with braids and bangs. Marmee has the coronet, a braid, and the hair pulled back. And then we have this lovely little girl. Look at how sweet she is. Her hair pulled back with the hair bonnet. Then we have Joe, ever practical Joe. She has her hair in a snood, and she has the bangs. And then we have Amy, and she was the artist. So, of course, she had all of those ringlet curls and the wonderful little design at the top. So the beautiful Little Women continued to be made by Madame starting in the 1920s and continuing right up through the end of the company. They never stopped making Little Women. And I imagine with the TV series and films that came out, there was a constant inspiration to recreating them, even though she just really liked them for herself. Let me show you Cinderella, and then I can move her to spread out the ballerinas a little more. But Cinderella, I wanted you to see this particular example because it is almost impossible to find the gown in this beautiful original blue color. They've usually faded, or I don't even know faded is the word, but the material that the gown was made of would almost like iridesce over time, and usually you'll have found them transformed into almost like a purple gown. But here it is in the original blue, and very rare to find. It's just gorgeous. Her hair, her complexion, everything about her is really quite stunning. Now I want to show another theme that remained constant with Madame Alexander through all of her years of production were the ballerinas. She loved the ballerinas, and I wanted to show you some examples. Well, I actually threw an ice skater in there for fun too, because ice skating was a popular theme. Once again, if you want to look at these 3 ballerinas, and I keep talking about the coiffure and the costumes, we have very, very similar costumes, but then there'll be little variations, like here we have gold and here we have silver. We would have variations in jewelry. She has the black velvet and she has the silver necklace. And then look at the hair on these 2. You can see it from the front. Now let me show you the sides and the back. And then see it this way. And then compare these two, which are quite similar, you think at first, because they both have the little cluster of curls on their forehead, but when you turn them around, you see that the larger one has this really unique motif where the hair is drawn sort of together, almost like a clip, and then held with roses that are wrapped around it. And again, look at the top of her hair, and you can see the seam for the stitching of the wig. Very, very beautifully done. And again, compare the two this way. Beautiful rosy cheeks on these dolls. Wonderful, wonderful complexions.